ओम श्री यतिराजाय विवेकानंद सूरये सच्चित सुख स्वरूपाय स्वामिने तापहारिणे. In our previous class, Swami Vivekananda explained to us how the vrittis are formed in our mind. These vrittis are nothing but waves in the chitta. Chitta is the mind stuff, which can be compared to a lake. And when these vrittis appear in our mind, I mean, when we are aware of our vrittis, our thoughts, what is the process that takes place? So, Swamiji is trying to explain in a very clear manner how these vrittis appear in our consciousness. First, there is the instrument. The instrument is either the eye, the ears, the nose, the six senses. Then, first there is the instrument, then there is the internal organ that is known as the Indriya, Sukshma Indriya. There is a Sthula Indriya, that is the external eye. That is part of the universe because all our gross impressions they enter our consciousness, our brain, our mind. Is the sound okay now?
What if someone is trying to get in?
No, it seems that someone's recording, and whoever's recording, that's where the sound is coming from. Someone's recording.
Yeah. Somebody messaged me that there is a beeping sound. As soon as you enter, if you forget the audio, to switch off the audio, there is a sound. I hope there is no sound now, everything is clear. Yeah, this happens when people enter, uh, and when they enter, if they have not switched off their audio, then there is a beep sound. Okay, anyway. Am I clearly audible now? Is there any background noise?
All clear, Maharaj.
Clear. Thank you.
So Swamiji says very clearly, we have to understand the process of the formation of thoughts. How do thoughts occur? And how these vrittis are formed? First is the instrument, that is the eye, ear, nose, and other things, the six senses, the external senses, and through those senses we receive the impressions of the world outside us, and the organ processes it and conveys it to the mind, and the mind attaches. The mind has to attach. The reactive mind has to attach. Otherwise, the impressions may be there in our eye and we may hear things, but we may not register it. To register it, the eyes have to somehow, the organs, the mind has to be attached to these organs, the instruments, and also the organs, the internal organs, the brain centers. When I say the organ, it means the centers in the brain of these respective organs. The eye has a center, the ear has a center. So we hear sounds, we see things only because the brain, the mind, which is subtle, attaches itself to these gross impressions. The mind takes the impression further in and then presents it to the discriminative faculty, that is the Vijnanamaya Kosha, Buddhi. So that is when a highly evolved person who is trying to become a yogi, he uses his buddhi to react or to decide how to deal with these vrittis. His mind is not just reactive. If his mind was reactive, then manas would have been enough. The manomaya kosha would have been enough. But no, the manomaya kosha is not enough because the impression has to be taken to the buddhi, which has to process and then take a choice, take a decision, and decide whether it is Shreya or Preya, or in whichever way the human personality has decided to analyze this impression with a good buddhi or with a bad buddhi. Buddhi also can be, we can say, buddhi, if it is not evolved, if it is tamasic, buddhi is always normally supposed to be sattvic. That is only when it is fully developed. But sometimes the buddhi is not uh, able to discriminate properly, able to see clearly the truth behind these impressions and is not able to react in a proper way. So it is the buddhi at the level of Vijnanamaya Kosha which
Hot
decides
cold?
how to react, and that decides our spiritual progress. So yogi's spiritual progress
Mhm.
is more or less decided by how his buddhi reacts
Can you
to
keep
the
yourself warm,
daily
Bidu?
thoughts and the daily actions which he comes across. There are so many actions and reactions going on in our life, but the buddhi has to play a very vital role if we are to lead a fruitful and a fulfilling life. That is not possible if our buddhi is not developed. That is why as I mentioned so many times, the essence of all mantras or even the Gayatri is to enlighten my mind, enlighten my buddhi. Dhiyo yona prachodhi. Give me that that intelligence with which I can see things, perceive things, not only perceive things clearly, but react to them properly, not just using the manas. So, a level above the manas, manas is the manomaya kosha, the level above the manas is the buddhi, where the reflection of the atma. So,
Hmm.
and there it is that is where the ego comes into the picture. The ahankara is, which is also part of the mind. Swamiji says it. The reaction, it flashes the idea of egoism. The egoism comes into being. Then I see, I decide, I do this, I do that. So I'm muting everybody again, and there's some noise. So this ego identifies itself with the vritti. So the whole process, I'll repeat how the whole process happens. First, we get some reactions from the outside, there is some action in the outside world. It passes through our external organ, it is given to the internal organ or indriya, which is in the brain. That brain center, the manas attaches itself to this brain center and perceives that, and that perception is forwarded to the discriminative faculty or buddhi, which is and which is the Vijnanamaya kosha, and then the sense of ego arises in there, and the sense of ego uh, creates a mixture of action on the mind and a reaction of the mind to that action. So there is some impression and there is a reaction. That reaction is known as vritti. So when every time we react to an external circumstance, we create a vritti. This mixture of action and reaction is presented to the Purusha, the real soul who perceives an object in this mixture, in this strange mixture of action and reaction. There should be something which uh, perceives this thing, which is independent of the mind, which is independent of the buddhi, which is also independent of the ahankara, which is independent of all these things. It is the background or the backdrop on which, like it is like the screen. When the projection is projected on the screen, you see things. Without the screen, the projection may be there, the light waves may be there, the movie will be projected in the air, but it will not fall. Only when it falls on a screen, then you can see the whole movie. So that is how this is explained, that without the Purusha who gives who perceives an object in this mixture. It perceives the world, perceives the feelings, perceives the external action, and also perceives his own reaction to that. It's not just he perceives the action which is the external impressions which are falling on his mind. No, it perceives the reaction which his buddhi decides, and the buddhi gives it back as a reaction, and that reaction also is a vritti. So this vritti is nothing but a wave in the mind stuff, which is a result of our interaction and the process which I just described. So they are but various processes in the mind stuff called chitta. Chitta is the mind stuff where our samskaras are there. So these samskaras enable us or force us to react in a particular way. Now we are not as free as we think. Our discrimination, our buddhi is not as free as we would like it to be. We want to react in a particular way, but we react in another way because of this mind stuff, the chitta which is there. So the buddhi has to arouse only those waves in the chitta which are helpful to us, positive, which are beneficial to us. For that, we require a lot of discrimination. For example, there is something which motivates us or which in which we try to react in an angry way. So the buddhi tells you that there is no reason why you should give a vritti of anger. A wave of anger should not emanate from you. So if you want to ascertain that, then you have to take buddhi on your side. That's what Swamiji says. The waves of thought in chitta are called vrittis, which are really whirlpool. And then he goes on to tell what is a thought. This thought, the various thoughts that we think, they are no different than the material that you see outside. It is just a finer form of the impressions of the sense organs or the impressions that we see around us. So the thought of a flower and a real flower, there is hardly any difference. If there is a flower, there is a thought of the flower. The only difference is the thought of a flower is a more subtle thing than the flower itself. So Swamiji goes on to say, thought is just a force like gravitation or repulsion. From the infinite storehouse of force in nature, the instrument, your instrument, which is known as chitta, it takes hold of some of the impressions and then sends it out as thought. So these thoughts are nothing but a subtle form of matter, according to Swamiji, or it is a subtle force. It is just a force which acts upon matter in a particular way. It is just like heat. When you heat an object, it becomes red, or if you heat a liquid, it boils. So that is the action of the thought on our pranamaya kosha or the annamaya kosha. The manomaya kosha and the vijnanamaya kosha, the thoughts which are produced, the vrittis which are produced, serve the purpose. And these thoughts are as contagious as the prana. They are as contagious as the heat. They are as contagious as the force which runs this universe. So thought is a force. This is a very important idea to understand. And how we manipulate this thought force? By restraining it. That is the goal of yoga. The goal of yoga, just as we handle the force of a flowing river, put a dam across it and generate electricity, Swamiji says, the infinite storehouse of chitta, of force in nature, some of the force is taken by the mind and then it is thrown out as thought. So we are handling a force, an unknown force, a subtle force, which is part of our personality. It is as part of our personality as the gross body and the gross prana. The living body with all its functions of breathing, digestion, blood circulation, they are also forces. They are gross forces. The forces that pump the blood, that pump the heart and the lungs, the motion of the lungs, the nerve forces, all these forces are perceivable, are tangible. We can understand that these are the forces which are manipulating our body. But we do not take cognizance of a force which is more subtle than these forces, and these forces actually, the thought forces, create a much greater impression on our personality than we normally understand. We think it's just a passing thought, or it's just thought. What will it matter? No, they are very subtle forces and sometimes more powerful than the gross forces. So Swamiji says, from the infinite storehouse of force in nature, some of the force is taken in by the mind and thrown out by the chitta, or in the mind, the whole mind stuff, as thought. So when it is thrown out as thought, it creates an impact. It is just like fire hitting a iron rod or a iron ball, and it glows and it gives out heat. So you cannot prevent the heat from going out from that fireball. So also from the universe of thought or universe of force around us, different forces are there. Gravitational force, Swamiji says, the infinite storehouse of force, that is prana and the akasha, the universal prana and the universal akasha, some of it gets caught in our brain and is thrown out in the form of reaction, in the form of thought, and that thought creates an impact. It creates a very real impact, as any other force does. It is just like you throwing a ball. It goes and hits certain objects, and then it's like a carom or a billiards ball. It goes and disturbs so many other balls on the table, and then there is movement. So also our thoughts go and impinge upon other thoughts, others' minds, and they cause a chain reaction. So Swamiji says, the instrument called chitta, which is our part of our karana sharira, it absorbs, the chitta takes hold of some of the force of the universe, and since it absorbs it, first it absorbs the reaction, and then gives out the reaction, and that reaction is thought. This force, as Swamiji said, is supplied to us through food, and out of that food, the body obtains the power of motion. Now, force is applied not only through thought. It's not that we only take in from the universe of different forces. There are many forces which our personality takes. We take, we absorb heat from outside, we absorb sounds, we absorb, there are so many. We are part of, gravity also influences us. There are so many forces which influence our body. There are many forces which influence our prana. There are many the life force within, not the universal prana, but the individual pranas, the five pranas. And then there is some force which is subtle, which impacts our mind. So our mind is a result of the various forces that are there in the fine forces in the universe. The forces of mind of a prophet, they are also there. They are there, all pervading in the universe, very powerful forces. The thought currents of great prophets are there. So also the thought currents of evil people, the bad vibrations, they are also there. Those forces also influence us. So, but the force is also supplied to us as food, and out of the food the body obtains the power of motion, etc. Others, the finer forces, it throws out in what we call thought. When it throws out, when the physical food is taken, the Annamaya kosha absorbs certain nutrients from it and throws out the rest of the food which is not useful for it, and that's how our body grows. So also our brain, our mind, our organs, the mind stuff, chitta, is continuously absorbing the subtle force of thought from the universe, and it is sending out at the same time as a reaction many thoughts. This is what is known as vrittis. So far we have discussed what these vrittis are. It is very important to understand because we are handling a force, and just as we handle different electric forces, the magnetic forces for our benefit, we also have to handle this thought force. If we want to uh, lead a fulfilled and joyful life, we have to learn the art of handling these forces, controlling it, and using it and making it flow through useful channels. That is the whole idea behind this yoga. Yoga is nothing but chitta vritti nirodha. So that is the second sutra. That is the significance of the second sutra which Swamiji is explaining. Chitta vritti nirodha. Chitta is the mind stuff. Now he has explained to us how the thoughts are created in our mind, the various steps which we discussed. And then it gives rise to a reactionary force, which is also a thought. So others' thoughts impinge upon our personality, our mind stuff, and it goes back to the world either in the form of reaction or in the form of a very calculated and positive thought. So that depends on us. So Swamiji says, take care of what you think, because the more negative thoughts you send around, you are polluting, we are all polluting the world. The more depressive thoughts we send, we are, as it were, sending out these negative forces, and they catch somebody and then they get affected. So also, the negative forces that are scattered around us, we have a tendency, if we are not careful, if we do not know the vrittis and how they act upon us, if we are not careful, we are likely to take the negative thoughts in. So the discriminative gate or the buddhi tells us to receive only the good thoughts, the positive thoughts, and always fill our mind, chitta, with good thoughts and good samskaras, so that good samskaras are created. These chittas, the chitta decides how we react. Our samskaras, the impressions that we have created by a constant exposure to these outer thoughts and giving wrong reactions, will create bad samskaras. If we continuously give good samskaras or good thoughts, then good samskaras are created, and that increases the possibility of good thoughts coming. Whenever there is a reaction, in the beginning, if you, out of 100 reactions, if, for example, you had 90 bad reactions and 10 good reactions, as a practice of yoga, as you go on practicing yoga, and as you understand the impact of vritti on your own mind and on others' mind, then you are careful. And when you practice yoga, you will see that the percentage of bad reactions or the bad thoughts, the bad vrittis, go on decreasing, and slowly you will realize that the proportion of reactions as bad thoughts become less and less and less. That's how purification of the mind takes place. What is purification of the chitta? Chitta vritti nirodha, first by understanding what these vrittis are, trying to stop them and control them and give a proper reaction and send out the right kind of thought as a reaction, is the responsibility or the initial step which a yogi has to take. So the second verse itself tells us yoga chitta vritti nirodha. This we have to somehow see that we are not just reactive to everything around us. If we are reactive, then our samskaras may send out bad thoughts. Every action, there will be a reaction. Every action of anger will have an opposite action of anger, and that will increase the anger in the whole atmosphere. So then that results in compounding our problems. So the yogi decides to react in a positive way, control that anger, and send that anger as, convert it into love, and then send the reaction as love. So the forces it throws out is what we call thought. So you have to be very careful what we think. So the mind is not intelligent. The mind is just reactive. It is the buddhi, because the intelligent buddhi is behind it. The intelligent buddhi gives it a positive turn to the mind. Otherwise, if we are at the mercy of the reactive mind, then we will be reacting just as animals do, action and reaction, action and reaction. Then there is no progress. But the reactive mind, if it is in the hands of buddhi, and the buddhi decides what thoughts to give out, and because the intelligent soul is behind the buddhi, the reflection of the intelligent purusha, the pure chaitanya or consciousness, is reflected more in the buddhi than in the manas. Buddhi reflects more of this consciousness. That is why it can see things clearly, perceive things clearly, and send out good thoughts very easily. You are the only sentient being. The mind is only an instrument. The manas is just an instrument through which you send back the thoughts back to the world. So you have to side with the intelligent mind. The buddhi should always understand that it is part of that Chaitanya. And that Chaitanya is what we call as God, or what we call as our Ishta, Sat, Chit and Ananda. When Sat, Chit, the Chit aspect and the Sat aspect and the Ananda aspect, if we understand, and through meditation, divert all our thoughts, divert all our incoming thoughts or the incoming inputs which we get through our sense organs and the mind, we present it to the buddhi, and the buddhi presents it to the soul. Soul is always involved, but the more the consciousness, more the light of consciousness shines on these thoughts, the better the reaction, your reaction will be. And that is what we say chitta shuddhi. When we say chitta shuddhi, means purification of the mind becomes purified as a result of identifying itself, keeping good company of the soul, not keeping company of the gross things. If it always dwells upon lower things, the idea of purity is nothing but forcing the mind to have the company of buddhi and the manas, and buddhi and the higher faculties, Anandamaya Kosha, and forcing it to react in a positive way so that it doesn't harm us, so that only positive samskaras are formed in the chitta, and that increases the possibility of only having good thoughts, good reactions, and that gives rise to peace and joy because of the Anandamaya Kosha. Now, take this book, as Swamiji says. Now he is giving an example. The book that we see is not exactly what we see. The same book seen by a child and the same book seen by an elderly person with a developed buddhi can be totally different. The child sees it as an object, whereas an elderly person or who has been educated gives out a reaction and sees, oh, is this book a novel? Is this book a book on philosophy, or is it just a light magazine? So he has the discriminative mind. But for the child, it is the same, whether you give him a book of film, because he is ignorant. His buddhi is not yet developed. So that is what, when the mind gives out the reaction in the form of the book. So the book that you see is your reaction to the object which is lying outside. Whereas the book that the child sees is his reaction to the object which is lying outside. The object is same, but the reaction is different. So in a way, Swamiji is trying to convince us that we create our own world. As I explained last time, there may be a rope lying in the dark. There are 2 or 3 friends going in the dark. And because of absence of light, because of absence of clarity, one friend sees it as a snake and starts shouting. The same rope is seen by the other as a rope, maybe as a dark rope, but he knows maybe it is just a rope. Or somebody else may feel that it is just a root which is on the ground, a root which is exposed, it is on the ground. But he will never think. But on the other hand, if there is a snake, the object may be a snake, but out of ignorance, because it is dark, the one person may take it to be a rope and try to touch it. So what we perceive is our reaction to the object that is lying behind. That is very important. The same manner, it is the same as throwing a stone into the water. If you throw a big stone, there is a big reaction. The reaction in the chitta depends on what we throw, what we allow, what are the good things or the dirty things we allow to impinge on our chitta. If we put rubbish, then the reaction also will be the same. If we put good things, the reactions will be good. So when a stone is thrown into the water, Swamiji says, when you throw a small stone, the ripple is very small. But if you throw a big boulder, the reaction is much more. There is a big splash. So The book form or the elephant that we see or a man form is not outside, it is our mental reaction. It is a very difficult thing to understand, but Swamiji says it is only the suggestion that is outside. It is outside, the world outside is just a suggestion. It impinges upon our consciousness, and what we throw out is the real universe for us. For the child, it is just an object. For an elderly person, it may be a book on philosophy. For an ignorant person, it may be a rope. For a person who has seen it clearly, it is a snake when there is a snake outside. So, and then Swamiji gives the, just repeating it because unless we understand the idea of vritti, unless we understand what these vrittis are, we will not be in a position to control these vrittis or understand the importance of controlling the vrittis. When you say chitta vritti nirodha, you might say, after all, what is the big fuss about? Let thoughts come and go. Why should I be bothered what thoughts come and what? Why should I be so cautious, so careful? We have to be careful because we have to handle this force very carefully. It is just like saying, why have to be careful when you are handling electricity? We have to be careful because electricity is a force. And if we don't know how to handle it, channelize it properly, it may give a current, it may harm your life. But if it is used properly, it can run several gadgets. If it is insulated properly, if that electric force is earthing is also given, everything is fine. If the electricity is handled properly, it can run several devices. But if you neglect it, if you allow it to just create havoc, then you may get a current, you may get a shock. So similarly, Swamiji says the real universe is always giving us some kind of force, is always getting converted into thoughts. And we have to learn the art of controlling these thoughts, which are technically known as in yoga as vrittis. So vritti nirodha, to control the vrittis, is the first step in yoga. Once you have controlled it, then you can channelize it. Once you have controlled the water by putting a dam, stop it, then you decide whether you will allow the water to irrigate a field or you allow that water, stored up water, the potential energy which you have gathered in your chitta, the thoughts, how you will utilize it for the benefit of the world. If you want to channelize it, then give out good thoughts, give out positive thoughts. So then we say, but going a step further, Swamiji says, if this is the process, then why does yoga tell us to stop the vrittis? The first condition is that you have to chitta vritti nirodha. In the second verse, Patanjali says, these thoughts have to be controlled. So what is the fun? Why should I control? Because control gives us power. The thoughts get power. The whole prana, the whole annamaya kosha, the pranamaya kosha, everything can be influenced by the power of thought. So some people call it auto-suggestion. Some people use this mental force to change their physical body also, though it is not advised here, but it is possible because it is after all a force, a subtler force than the pranamaya kosha. The buddhi and its impact, it has its own force. It creates a own subtle force which can be channelized properly if they are controlled properly. To control it, you have to know the vritti, what are the different types of vrittis, and how it impacts my personality, my annamaya kosha, my pranamaya kosha. And when we understand that, by controlling it first and then trying to understand it and then trying to channelize it, our personality changes. So it is the mind stuff that is the chitta, and the vrittis that are the waves and the ripples rising in it when external causes cause these ripples. There should be some external cause, otherwise the ripples are not formed. Somebody has to throw a stone. So the action upon our mind and its reaction together constitute our life. These vrittis are our universe. So we can't be free unless we know how to handle these, unless we know how to control this, our universe can be miserable, or our universe can be the universe that we see can be joyful if we handle the vrittis properly, or it can make us miserable. It can give rise to depression, it can give rise to bad vrittis, it can give rise to anger and all sorts of negative emotion, which not only disturb the prana but also disturb the annamaya kosha. The physiological processes are disturbed, everything is disturbed when things are disturbed at the manomaya kosha level. Because that's why a strong buddhi, by regular spiritual practices, by practice of yoga, we try to purify these vrittis. When we say purification of the mind, it means nothing but purification of these thoughts. Because once you purify the chitta, the impressions, by continuously giving good impressions, by continuously practicing sadhana, by continuously doing japa. When you do japa, when you say prayer, what exactly you are doing? We are just creating an impression, meditating on an Ishta who is beyond this buddhi, beyond the Anandamaya Kosha, who is even responsible for the quality of our chitta. The more we meditate on that, the more clearly we see these vrittis, the more powerful these vrittis become, the more positive it becomes. And that is how we make spiritual progress. So, and moreover, we have to first identify or touch the bottom of the lake. Chitta, if it is compared to a lake, the chitta does not allow us to see the Purusha, it does not allow us to see the Satchidananda, Brahman, the Atman or the Brahman, which is the same thing. It doesn't allow us to see our real self, which is potentially divine. So why is it so? It doesn't allow us to see with clarity because there are so many chitta vrittis that the lake of the chitta mind, the higher mind, the samskaras, they are bubbling up constantly and the surface is disturbed. So you don't see the floor of the pond or the lake or the ocean. We don't see because the waves are too many. We just see disturbances. We see a disturbed mind. We don't see a calm mind. It is only when the vrittis stop, the calm mind allows us to touch base, to touch the Satchidananda who is beyond that and who is really giving life to all these things. He is giving life to the thoughts. That Satchidananda or the Chaitanya is giving life, not only life but also light. It is enabling our mind to see things clearly, to perceive things clearly, to react clearly, to give out good thoughts. So all the purification which takes place in the chitta is the result of allowing more and more of the Atma to manifest, the Chaitanya, Shuddha Chaitanya, to manifest through our personality. When it comes to the Annamaya Kosha level, it's manifesting very little. When it comes to the Pranamaya Kosha, it's more subtle, so it is manifesting a little more. So when you say Mayan is very energetic, he's a little bit more rajasic. But if he's inert, if he's living at the body level, he is tamasic because he doesn't think anything higher than the body. The gratification of the senses, eating, drinking, and doing all sorts of things with his body. So that is reflecting less of the Atman or the Purusha and identifying ourselves with the gross body and being happy with that. But a person who has slightly more rajas, his prana will be more active. He will be doing a lot of good work. He'll be doing something beneficial. And when he becomes sattvic, he'll become quiet. He'll become calm. He'll become peaceful. His reactions always will be peaceful. Though outwardly his body and the prana may be highly active. But at the same time, his mind and the buddhi just witnesses this drama of life and he is not perturbed. That is the whole idea of Sthita Prajna in the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, where Sri Krishna is telling Arjuna that be a Sthita Prajna. Then Arjuna asks, how does a Sthita Prajna walk? How does a Sthita Prajna talk? How does he behave? How does he react? What are his thoughts? So Sri Krishna is explaining in the 72, there are so many verses in the second chapter which deal with this idea of sthita prajna. Prajna means the consciousness. Sthita means steady. one whose consciousness is not wavering because of the vrittis. The vrittis, when they have been studied, they become steady, they don't cause any more ripples, then you see the chitta very clearly. Then you become one with the Atman, with the Purusha. If the water is muddy or is agitated all the time, the bottom will not be seen. If it is clear, then there are no waves, then we shall see the bottom. The bottom of the lake is our true self. That's what Swamiji says in Raj Yoga. The bottom of the lake is our true self. And if we see it clearly, then we will see that it makes our life more joyful, fulfilling, and all those things. The lake is the chitta and the waves are the vrittis. Again, the mind is in three states. Now, Swamiji is trying to explain what is this tamas, rajas, and sattva states of the mind. In the physical nature, we see tamas is more inert, rajas is more active, and sattva is calm. It appears as if it is inert, but it is a high state of vibration. It's very fine. So, mind, Swamiji says, can exist in these three states. Just as the body can be tamasic, the food can be tamasic, the food can be rajasic, or the food can be sattvic. So also the mind has these three states. The one is darkness, where there is lot of confusion, lot of ignorance, because the chitta is not functioning properly. The chitta is not able to analyze whether it is a rope or a snake. That person is always confused. This is found in brutes and idiots. It only acts to injure. No other idea comes into that state of mind. When one is in that state of mind, he always thinks, reacts in a very peculiar way. He always disturbs others, disturbs himself. He is restless. At the same time, he causes problems to others. Or sometimes he doesn't react. No matter how much good advice you give, he is just not able to grasp it. It is like pouring water on a stone. A stone is inert. If it is a sponge, it will absorb because it is porous. It allows the force of water to pass through it, and then it can absorb it. But a stone is too tamasic. So the mind also similarly, if there is always darkness, always confusion, then it is tamas. It is found in brutes and idiots. It only acts to injure. No other idea comes to that state of mind. Then there is an active state of mind. Rajas, whose chief motives are power and enjoyment. I will be powerful, I will rule over others. So this Rajas motivates us to produce very strong waves and of egoism, ego, and the desire to rule over others, and the different uh, actions which motivate him in the name of getting success, in the name to dominate over others, to create some kind of power center within themselves and try to control everything. So this is known as Rajas. I will be powerful and rule over others. These are the signs of a Rajasic mind. And then there is a state called Sattva, serenity and calmness. When the waves have been reduced to such an extent that they can only send very good and positive thoughts, harmless thoughts, thoughts of peace, thoughts of joy. So these are the prophets or the saints who live in that plane, on that plane. It's not inactive. The plane, the state of mind in which the waves of the mind cease, they stop for a time. It's a very powerful state. It is consciously subduing these thoughts and channelizing that power. It's like consciously stopping a river and channelizing the force of that river for useful purposes. That is what these saints, yogis do. A yogi is supposed to control his thought, use the restraining power of the mind, and focus it on good things so that the chitta vrittis do not cloud his mind. He thinks clearly, he sees things clearly, and he reacts clearly. He doesn't make any mistake in his life. It is not inactive like tamas. Tamas also is dull. Tamas also is very calm. But that calmness is because of ignorance, whereas this calmness is because of intense activity. They are intensely active, more active than the Rajasic people. But that intensity is not physical. It is not physical. If it is physical, it will manifest itself as restlessness. You see the people trying to dominate over others, doing this, doing that, running here, running that, trying to control others, trying to rule over others. All these things also indicate activity, but it is a gross activity. When that same gross activity becomes activity in a subtle way, by controlling the thoughts, that is possible only by first controlling chitta vritti nirodha, by stopping the thought waves and then channelizing them higher and higher planes with the help of spiritual practices, japa and prayer. So the greatest manifestation of power, Swamiji says, if you really want to be a powerful person, then you have to be calm. The greatest manifestation of thought power is to be calm. So it is the calm person who has struggled very hard to control the chitta vrittis. He can create a very big impact, a positive impact on the world. It is easy to be active. That's why when people retire, they find it so difficult to stay in one place because they can't raise their mind to the sattvic level. They still prefer to be in rajas. So they'll look for some activity, do this, do that, watch movies, play cards, and do something which will keep them active. They can't sit still. So this restlessness of the mind makes us rajasic, which we have to avoid. A yogi has to avoid that, because this restlessness, if it is there in our mind, then we cannot hope to become sattvic. That's why Swamiji says, though it looks very odd or very strange, that it is, Swamiji says, it's easy to be active. It is easy to just get up and do things rather than sit and meditate and struggle with the thoughts and control the mind. To control the mind is so difficult. Swami Turiyananji once told a brahmachari, he said, I am not going to do any work. He said, okay, what will you do? He said, I'll go to my room and just meditate. He was struggling with his mind and then was not able to. So he just started looking at birds and making noises, and he was not able to sit. So Turiyananji saw from the window that this brahmachari is not able to sit calmly and make the mind, restless mind, calm. He cannot do it. And that is why that restlessness, though he is not doing any activity, physical activity, he appears to be sattvic. He wants to be sattvic, but he is becoming tamasic. So Turiyananji scolded him and said, open the door. You come, I'll give you some spade. You try to dig this garden and do some work. Because he knew, because Swamiji also pointed out, yoga also points out to us that it's easy to be active than to sit quiet. Normally you will fall into tamas. So it requires more energy and more effort to make calm down the thoughts, the vagaries, the restlessness of the mind. If we succeed in somehow taming the mind, then Swamiji says tremendous power is generated. That is the secret of yoga. Then he gives an example. It is easy to loosen the reins. He is comparing the body like Kathopanishad does. He is comparing the body to a chariot. It is very easy for the driver to allow the horse to run wherever they want. But if he wants to make the chariot run in a proper direction and control it, then he has to pull the reins. He should not, he has to use tremendous force. It requires more force to control rather than allow it to go wild. So it is very easy for the mind to become, we are always tired of trying to control our mind. The moment you ask somebody to sit quietly and calm down the restless mind, he'd rather go and do some work rather than sit quietly and struggle with the mind. He doesn't have the patience. A yogi, unless he's a yogi, will not have the patience to even calm down the vrittis. So it is just like holding the reins. The driver or the charioteer has to struggle to make the horses. Horses are like the senses, the sense organs. So to control the mind, to control the thoughts, to control the sense organs, it requires tremendous strength. And when we do it, it is a sattvic strength, which is higher than the rajas. So the wrong idea that rajas requires strength, whereas it is easy to be sattvic, it is easy to be calm, that is wrong. Swamiji knows, and from experience he is saying that it is more difficult to control the restlessness of the mind than we can be easily active. We can be easily active, but it is difficult to remain inactive and think intensely, live in the plane of thought and calm down the mind. Anyone can do that, but he who can stop the plunging horses, any charioteer can leave the reins and ask the horses to run wherever they want. But the chariot will not go properly. The horses will go here and there and in search of grass here and there. So one horse will pull on one side, the other horse will pull on the other side, and the journey will be affected. Whereas the strong man, or a person of very strong willpower, he says, no, I will control these horses. So that is why the self-control, the control of the senses, the control of the chitta, the control of the vrittis, he is advocated so much in this Raj Yoga, which requires the greater strength, letting go or restraining. Restraining requires more strength. The calm mind is not the man who is dull. There is a huge difference between tamas and sattva. A sattvic mind is intensely active. He is fully in control. He is much more stronger. His mind and will is stronger than that of a rajasic person who apparently does wonderful actions, very dynamic. We praise such people. He is very dynamic, is always active. But it is still more difficult according to Swamiji. The calm man is not the man who is dull. Many times the calm man may be tamasic. That is why Swamiji is warning. The calm man is not the dull. You must not mistake sattva for dullness or laziness. Activity is the manifestation of inferior strength. Calmness is the manifestation of superior strength. So when you have struggled to make the mind calm, it shows that you have a greater strength than doing activity non-stop 24 hours in your life. There are highly active people. They think it is great and they want others who are sitting quietly, trying to struggle to do japa and do some spiritual practice, trying to instigate them. Say, do something. Why are you sitting like this? But if they are really struggling and they are succeeded in struggling, controlling the struggling vrittis, the mind, the chitta, then it is a superior manifestation of the personality, and he is closer to the Purusha, closer to becoming a yogi. The chitta is always trying to get back to its natural pure state, but the organs draw it out. The chitta being in close proximity, that is, chitta is that part of our mind which is very near, superior to the buddhi and very near to the Atman. When it is near to the Atman, it is pure. It's a naturally pure state a child is born with. But because the organs draw it out, our lower organs, our physical organs, our prana, everything forces it, and the chitta is disturbed and it brings it down to its level, and then uh, it draws it out and then it becomes weak, it dissipates. It is like you have stored a lot of energy by putting a dam and you just allow the gates to be opened, then it will go helter-skelter. You will not be able to generate electricity. So, to restrain this, to check this outward tendency, to check the organs from dissipating your thought energy and start on its return journey to the essence of intelligence is the first step in yoga. And going back to the original source where it was pure, that power is in Kundalini, it is known as the power of Ojas. The power of Ojas is when you have restrained yourself, restrained all the sense organs, restrained the mind. A sort of thought energy goes up the spine and it tries to go through the different chakras. That is why when we meditate in the heart so that we try to channelize this thought energy, focus it here, at least in the middle of the spine, and then allow it to or force it to go upwards. Now, the first step in yoga, because only this way can the chitta get into its proper course. The chitta is, too many waves are coming, too many vrittis are disturbing the calm surface of the chitta, and with that type of chitta we are not able to do anything. But the moment we prevent the sense organs from becoming restless, from prevent them from making us restless, then you will find a tremendous energy is generated. And Swamiji says, although the chitta is in every animal, from the lowest to the highest, it is only in the human form that we find it as intellect, as buddhi. Chitta is there common to everybody, but in the human form, it is there as intellect. It is there as a pure buddhi. The buddhi attaches itself to the intellect, to the chitta, which is pure because of its proximity with the Purusha or the Ishta or the Brahman or Sachidananda, whatever you call. So that is the whole purpose of leading a godly life, to performing sadhana, performing yoga. Until the mind stuff, chitta, can take the form of the intellect, it is not possible for it to return to through all the steps and liberate the soul. So the essence here is we have to use our buddhi and combine it with the chitta and make it pure once again. Allow it to regain its original purity, which is because of the high reflection of the consciousness which is behind the buddhi, which is beyond the koshas, which is beyond the Anandamaya kosha. Even the chitta, as I told you, the samskaras are part of the Anandamaya kosha. Its original state is pure. The water was very pure, but because there were so many ripples, so many waves, the surface had become disturbed, so we were not able to identify or purify the chitta. But the closer it meditates on God, the closer it goes towards God by meditation, prayer, japa, and all those things, the more pure it becomes, and the more the glory of divinity is reflected in that chitta. That is the goal of life. That is what we call a salvation, because that buddhi is absent in animals and brutes. Only in the higher form, this buddhi enables it to push it towards its goal, that is mukti. So immediate salvation is almost impossible for the cow or the dog, though they have a mind, they have a manas, but they just have a reactive mind, because chitta cannot as yet take that form which we call intellect. So they don't have an intellect which can purify the chitta and take it closer to and identify itself with the pure Atman. The chitta manifests itself in the following forms. The chitta, the mind stuff, takes the following forms. I will just discuss what these 5 forms are, and we will discuss it in great detail in the next class. The chitta, the mind stuff, the lake of the mind, can manifest itself in different ways. Kshipta, that is scattering. The chitta can be scattering, the scattered mind, that is wavering, scattering. Muda, darkening, means very dull. It is full of tamas. It is dark. You don't see anything. It's not scattering because it is impossible for it to even act. Mudha, that is why Mudha. Mudha means foolish or darkening. Vikshipta, gathering. Kshipta means scattering. Vikshipta state is a higher state which is gathering back. The mind which was being disturbed and being scattered all over the place, or which was dark, which was unable to do anything. By sattva, what we are doing is we are gathering. Vikshipta and ekagra. Ekagra means once you gather the mind, then it can be one pointed. So ekagrata, ekagra, one pointed, and niruddha, that is fully concentrated. That is in the state of samadhi or dhyana. So first we have to do dharana. First we have to do pratyahara, which is the gathering of the thoughts, not allowing them to go out. And after gathering, we have to make it one pointed, and then one pointed becomes niruddha. So chitta vritti nirodha. That vritti has to be totally stopped, concentrated. And after becoming one pointed only, you can make it niruddha or concentrated. So the shikta the scattering form, we will not discuss in great detail, but what Kshipta does is its tendency is to manifest in the form of pleasure or pain, Shreya or Preya. You have the pleasure, you have the pain, which is the Preya. When you follow the Preya, the mind is totally in a Kshipta state. The Kshipta state means in scattered state, you are just living your mind at the mercy of your chitta, uncontrolled chitta. So sometimes it will give you pleasure, or sometimes it will give you pain. It will not give you joy. Joy can be only if your mind is controlled. The commentator says the third form, and the Muda is the darkening form, is dullness, which is inert or maybe which results in destruction. So with a Muda mind, there is a tendency to destroy everything and reduce it to gross things. So that is the second. The third is third form is natural to the devas and angels, and the first and second to demons. The asuras and the devas, these are just human beings. Human beings themselves behave as asuras and devas. The asuras are the people who either have their mind in the kshipta scattered form or in the muda form. So first and second types are common to the asuras. And the vikshipta and the other three, Swamiji says, are common to the devas. Devas are people who are, Div means to enlighten. So enlightened people who are trying to control their minds, they will be living either on the vikshipta, that is by pratyahara, they will be gathering their mind, they will be controlled in their behavior, controlled in their thoughts also will be controlled, and or they will go further and make the mind ekagra or make the mind niruddha. So these are the different things which the different states of the mind which the chitta takes. The chitta manifests itself in the following states. We'll discuss in great detail and understand its implications in our day-to-day life. What are the states? Again, I will repeat. Kshipta, scattering. Mudha, darkening. Vikshipta, that is gathering. Ekagrata, ekagram chitta. That means it is focused, it is concentrated. And niruddha, that is ekagra is one pointed. It is still there, the waves are there, but whereas concentrated, that is dharana and dhyana, where dharana is the one pointed mind, but when you do dhyana, when it becomes totally bereft of thought waves, it comes to a stage where everything is calm, peaceful, joyful and blissful, because it is only thinking of the Atman or thinking of the pure Chaitanya. That is known as Niruddha. So yoga chitta vritti nirodha means we try to not only take the mind from the kshipta and the mudha, the lower levels, but take them through stages, vikshipta, gathering, ekagra, and then finally make them go into samadhi. Samadhi is the final state, or the dhyana, through dhyana. So we'll have open the session for some questions. Yeah. What is the importance? I'm reading from the chat. Just a minute. Yeah. Yeah. Somebody has a nice question he has asked. What is the purification of the mind and purification of the heart same or different? So purification of the heart we use because the heart is the seat of buddhi. So the mind is a reactive mind. See, as I told you, there are four parts of the mind. they are not parts, they are 4 phases of the mind: the manas, the buddhi, the ahankara, and chitta. So the buddhi is when you allow the mind, do not allow the mind to be reactive, and clear the chitta. It is the chitta that is purified. Chitta is the purified by its proximity with the buddhi. And normally we say, when we say it's not the physical heart, but when we arouse or when we awaken the buddhi by making it more sattvic, by allowing, by meditation, by prayer, by doing japa, we focus on the chitta and then make it with the buddhi gets awakened. That is the purification of the mind. So the purification of the mind or purification of the heart, it is the same thing. Because the mind is impure by nature, manas is impure. So when you purify it, it becomes buddhi, it becomes a illuminated buddhi or a purified mind. So when you say the purification of the heart or the mind, it is the same thing. Now, what is the importance of mind in relation to consciousness? If the mind is settled, then how is it that we remember dreams in our mind? So it is not the mind that the dreams, the waking state, they are all different states of the mind. And they are perceived by the Purusha is the only one, the consciousness or chitta is the only one which perceives it. If the reflection of the Chaitanya is more in the dream state, when the mind is in the dream state, then you remember dreams. The dreams become conscious, the dreams become alive. They become sometimes so real that you feel that you are actually seeing those things in the waking state. So the Chaitanya can be reflected in the waking state, it can be reflected in the dream state also. So how can we get, if the mind is subtle, mind is definitely subtle, subtler than it's not as subtle as the buddhi. As I told you, it is subtler than the physical body, Annamaya Kosha. It is subtler than the Pranamaya Kosha, the life forces which are tangible. Mind is slightly higher, and that is why it is more subtler. But subtler than the mind is the buddhi. And then we come to the pure consciousness, which is not only subtle, it's beyond the subtle. It's that which makes a gross subtle. The more the reflection of the consciousness, which is always present, it is present in the Annamaya Kosha, consciousness is present in the Manomaya Kosha, the Pranamaya Kosha, all the different koshas. But as you go up in the hierarchy, if you see, the Vijnanamaya Kosha reflects more of that Chaitanya. So we can say it is more conscious. Whereas if it goes down, the Manomaya Kosha, then it can be manifest in the form of dream. So that is what we have to understand. So now that is the relationship of what consciousness and the mind. The consciousness is not of the mind. It is borrowed consciousness which the mind has. Pure consciousness is something apart from all the 5 koshas. But when it is reflected in the mind, it appears that the mind is conscious. If it reflects in the buddhi, there is more consciousness. So also, when it reflects fully in the chitta, the samskaras become, then you have the Anandamaya Kosha. So anyway, the next question is, you should be careful about what we think. How can we get better at this? How can we reduce negative thoughts process, especially in current situation? Yeah. So one has to be careful in the sense, one has to avoid things which arouse negativity, as simple as that. If a diabetic wants to control his sugar, all he has to do is avoid sugar. So we have to avoid bad thoughts. We have to avoid, because we have enough intelligence to know what are the things which induce bad thoughts. If we watch or listen and do bad things, then bad thoughts will come. Bad actions lead to bad thoughts. So, or we allow the bad influences to come, then so that is how we should be careful about what we think. Though we are not so much, even if we are not allowing ourselves to bad influence, but still the thoughts can be bad. That is because we have neglected our chitta. So The process is by spiritual practices, by japa, by prayer, by intense meditating on higher things, you have to slowly replace those bad thoughts. They cannot be wished away. The chitta is, if it is full of negative impressions collected from childhood and also from the previous life, because the same chitta we are carrying to the next life. So the only way to reduce bad thoughts is to constantly pour good thoughts. There is no other way. Pratipaksha bhavana. Very clearly, Yogi Patanjali says there is no shortcut. There cannot be a shortcut. It is a very, very painful process. As Holy Mother said, that once you have wound the reel with different colored thoughts, we have to undo it slowly. You can't just say that I will remove the red thought, red colored thread, because after that you have wound blue, you have wound green, and then suddenly if you decide that I want to remove the red, first you have to remove the topmost thought. So all these samskaras, they can be negated only by regular spiritual practice. That is the whole purpose of yoga, the whole purpose of meditation, the whole purpose of japa is just to unwind what all bad things have been forced into the chitta. So the chitta has to be purified by 4 yogas. One is japa yoga, the other is prayers, the other it can be singing good songs or exposing yourself to good thoughts, satsanga, reading good books. There are hundreds of ways of doing it. Only thing is one has to be in positive company and positive thoughts as much as possible. Many times it may not be practical because we will be surrounded by people who are generating negative thoughts. But whenever we get a chance, whenever we are not in their influence, we should neither seek nor avoid. Swamiji says, neither seek nor avoid. You can, when you are forced to be in their company, you generate these good thoughts from within. You try to remember, have an undercurrent of japa or undercurrent of good thoughts and just block the thoughts. But when you are not in their presence, use that time when there are no negative thoughts around you, there are no negative influences around you, one has to cultivate these thoughts in a very positive way. That is what spiritual practice is. Whenever we get time in between difficult phases of our life, we have to not let the mind loose. You have to gather the mind, as he says. We have to do vikshipta through gathering the mind back and focusing it on the goal of our life. By focusing on our Ishta, it becomes easy. If you don't have Ishta, focus it on the pure Atman, pure consciousness, which is difficult to imagine. That's why we take that consciousness as coming in the form of Sri Ramakrishna or Krishna or any other God in whom we see that pure consciousness. We don't see the incomplete person in that Ishta. The Ishta is always perfect, fully manifest divinity. So when you meditate on that, the negative thoughts will gradually decrease. Now, can we control a vritti if it is already formed in the mind? Yes, this is a good question. The vritti can be controlled better if we target it at the source. The only way to do is through spiritual practices. We may try very hard, but once the vritti comes, we have to just watch it and allow it to go. So to control it at the root, we have to use the mantra, the bija which is there, which has a potency, which has the possibility or the capacity to destroy the vritti before it has been formed. In the chitta, the vrittis are in potential form. They are just waiting to bubble up. But if you have to handle it at the bottom of the lake, then you have to use certain powerful methods like prayer, like sadhana, like reading good books, and even doing japa and all those things. Before they are already formed, before they get a chance to become a vritti, it can be handled. That is the goal of yoga. Next. Also, as I understand, this phenomena is similar to reinforcement learning and artificial Bayesian inference. I don't know what it is because I am not a mathematician, or maybe I have not done any study in that. I could form a mathematical model of it by listening to you. Very good. You go ahead. If you can make a mathematical model of Bayesian inference in but only the people who are masters in artificial intelligence and mathematics, perhaps they will be able to make some sense. But for a layman, the thing is, Swami Vivekananda and especially Sri Ramakrishna has made these complex things simple. If you want to make simple things complex, then you use mathematics, you use artificial intelligence. That is what people do. They want to make simple things complex. But if you want to make complex things simple, then you have to go back to these prophets, Buddha, Christ, Sri Ramakrishna, Rama, Krishna. They go to the source, they go to the basics. So that's fine, it can be done. Now it is proven that the output depends on the learning process, which we tune by adding or reducing the hidden layers in the neural networks. That may be true. These things may be true at a very gross level. So, but when we go to the subtle levels, the basic ideas which our prophets and saints have discovered by their own experience, they don't propose to dabble with these thoughts and the mind and the intellect too much, because that is an incompetent instrument. The mind or the intellect is an incompetent instrument to understand the phenomena of Chaitanya. Consciousness is something which has to be experienced. You can't make a mathematical model, because the moment you make a mathematical model, it comes to a lower state of buddhi. So you have to go beyond buddhi. You have to go beyond manas and buddhi. You have to go to a state where you can really experience that consciousness. So it is good, you may try, but that will always remain incomplete or inconclusive. Conclusion will be reached only when you touch the consciousness. Is the chitta also affected by the ego? Does chitta vritti nirodha overcome ego? Yes, definitely. It is the ego. Ego vanishes. Ego is also a vritti only. Ahankara vritti. Asmita, they call it asmita. That I-ness. Ego is also a vritti. We will come to the 5 types of vrittis. Raga, dvesha, abhinivesha, asmita and all. There are 5 different vrittis. Ego is one of them. So definitely chitta is affected by the ego. Chitta vritti assumes, or after you do chitta vritti nirodha fully, the ego also goes. That is what happens when you go into dhyana. So a very big question, and the last question, so I will end with this. When someone has a medical condition on the physical side, whether acute heart attack or chronic like psoriasis and other things, I don't know what it is, then is there an impression on the higher or subtle koshas, or it just physically? Yeah, it affects all the levels. Specifically, would there have the vasana or a current sharir for one to develop a medical condition or not? Definitely. Would it be a result of vritti as well? I guess the same question applies to healing. Yes, whether it is healing or disease, the effect of the mind and the chitta samskaras, the vrittis, all are connected to each other, even the ego. So whatever is manifest is part of prakriti. So what you call as illness is a disturbance of the prana on the body. Physical illness. I mean, physical illness is nothing but an imbalance in the anatomy or physiology and the physiological processes, the prana. So that imbalance will have its effect on the mind. Definitely, a sick person will have a tendency to have a sick mind unless he has raised his mind to such a level that he is not under the control of the gross. Till then, there are cases where yesterday we discussed about Swami Turiyananda. He underwent a carbuncle operation, which is very painful, without any anesthesia. He said, I'll just detach my mind from my body. So only yogis can do it, because they have the capacity to control their thoughts in such a way that they don't allow it to touch the body. In those cases, the sickness or the illness will not affect the mind. But in all other cases, normal cases where we are still bound by the physical body, we have not detached ourselves sufficiently, we will have to feel the effect. And the reverse is also true. The mind will have a positive effect on the body also, because we have to undo what we have done. So some of our diseases may have their cause in the causal body or the Karana Sharira. So solving the problem, that is why the universal solution is to tackle the Karana Sharira, to tackle the Chitta, tackle all the samskaras at the root, so that the other manifestations, whether it is physical manifestation in the form of illness, mental illness, or lack of clarity, that is Vijnanamaya Kosha is not working properly, all these illnesses can be solved if we handle it at the root before even the vrittis form. So it is true, in a way it is true, that the more the subtle, the more we attach ourselves to our subtle personality, the less we will have problems in the lower spheres, the lower koshas. That is definitely there. There may be physical pain, but you will be able to detach. Like Sri Ramakrishna had cancer, but that did not remove. He could easily live in any plane he liked. He could live in the Anandamaya Kosha, even though his physical kosha was suffering. So Turiyananji said, I could see myself. In one letter he says, when I was very sick, I saw the prana is trying to go out of the body. See, he gave a beautiful explanation. It's an experience worth remembering. So Turiyananji said, when I was very, very sick, I saw as if an outer prana is coming and trying to push out the prana from my body. And after he was just watching it. You see the wonderful spiritual state he had. He said he didn't mind if his body, he was totally Jivan Mukta. So he did not bother. But he saw that fight going on, and finally the prana which was in his body managed to throw out the prana which was coming and trying to eject it out. And then he saw it as fun, as if he is watching a nice fun, a quarrel between two people. And then he told his brahmachari disciple who was serving him, don't worry, I'm not going to die. The prana which came and tried to eject the prana from this body, now it has been defeated. At least I will live for a few years more. So for them it is possible to detach themselves completely. But it is not so easy as it can be explained. These people had this experience because for years and years they meditated on the subtle. They meditated on the consciousness, pure consciousness. So anyway, to understand Raj Yoga, I'll take the last question. To understand Raj Yoga as it is, we have to elevate our mind through intense practice and gain experience. Outsourcing this practice to a computer in order to prove a human experience is vanity. Perhaps this is an answer to the question which Shiva Tandava, I don't know who is Shiva Tandava. He has asked this question that computer can, artificial intelligence, we can make a mathematical model. So the answer has been given here that to understand Raj Yoga, yes, it is perfectly correct. We have to elevate our mind. So any effort to bring it down, to elevate our mind through intense practice and gain experience. That experience is the proof of Raj Yoga. That is a higher state. But if you bring that experience and try to explain it, that means it is bringing down to the level of trivial. So when you bring it down to the level of trivial mind and try to explain it through formulas, through mathematical models, the essence of that experience is lost. So these things can be understood. So that is why understanding spirituality, understanding yoga is one thing. Experiencing yoga is another thing. This is a wonderful suggestion which has been given. Outsourcing this practice to a computer. If you outsource it to some mathematical model which the computer may do it for you, is not the solution, because that is trivializing. It's like asking a inert thing to explain what consciousness is. To understand consciousness, you have to be one with that consciousness. You have to experience it as consciousness. That is why you have to become Brahman to understand what Brahman is. You can't just use your mind to explain what is Brahman. Brahman cannot be made Uchista. Thakur gave beautiful example. He said you cannot defile it with your mouth. Means you can't explain what Brahman is. You have to experience it. So it's a good suggestion. So now we will conclude today. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.